You know, mine's lightening up quite a bit. Oh, we're on. I think we're on. James, are we on?
Good afternoon, and welcome to the June version of the 10,000 Oaks Council on Aging meeting. We have a very full schedule today, so let's get started. Commissioner Silverberg, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? None of that was on.
Hand over your heart. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now that I have my microphone on, Francine, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Borghi is not here. Commissioner Fotheringham?
Here.
Commissioner Grimm?
Here.
Commissioner Healy?
Here.
Commissioner Loomis?
Yes.
Commissioner Norkin?
Here.
Commissioner Shentes? Commissioner Searden?
Here.
Commissioner Silverberg?
Present.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any public comments? I don't see anybody requesting public comments, so we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is a great pleasure for us. Our guest speaker, Dr. Lisa Hayden. Dr. Hayden is a research psychologist with the Greater Los Angeles VA Hospital's healthcare system. She's also a delegate to the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging and has been recently elected to the Camarillo Council on Aging. Dr. Hayden will be talking to us about understanding dementia and memory loss. Dr. Hayden?
Thank you, Jim. I will be talking about understanding dementia and memory loss, and per special request, I will also be talking a little bit about some of the research that I'm doing with caregivers at the VA.
A little bit closer to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, no problem.
No one's ever accused me of not being loud before. I find that when I give a talk, if people interrupt me and ask questions, it makes it so much more interesting for me. So if you have any questions or anything comes up, I sure hope you'll do that. Okay, so understanding dementia and memory loss. And that's who I am, as Jim said. I'm with the VA, and I'll have my contact information at the end as well, so that if anyone's interested in talking to me just about anything or about my research, they can contact me. So this is often what comes up, is that family members start noticing that something's wrong. And here are some common signs that someone you love may need more help. And it never fails that right after Christmas, right around the first of the year, I get a slew of phone calls from family members calling and saying, we think something's wrong. Can we come in and see you, or can we make an appointment? Because the kids have come home for the holidays and they've had a chance to visit mom and dad. And here are some things that they may have noticed or other loved ones may notice. Mail and bills that are piling up. It's not been uncommon for me to hear about that turn-off notices for utilities or things like that, and mom or dad or Aunt Jane or whomever it is has always been very good about paying their bills on time. A house that is cluttered or unkempt, food that's uneaten or spoiled, that's usually a sign that something's not right. Personal hygiene issues. So whereas, our loved one used to be very good about keeping clean and spotless, that's not the same anymore. Scorching on the bottoms of pots and pans. So that means that maybe they're not paying really great attention when they're cooking, things like that. Forgetting to take medication. And one thing that I used to do when I was a social worker is I would always ask to see people's pill bottles, and we still do this at the VA when we're in clinic. We'll actually ask people to bring them in, because we can look at the date that the prescription was filled, and then we can look at how many pills have been used, and it gives us a really good indication of how things are going, or if medication's being taken correctly. Which, by the way, 60% of Americans do not take medication as prescribed. All of us make little mistakes, I'm sure, and skip medication. So I know it's part normal, but we're talking about really forgetting and maybe not getting things refilled. Missed doctor's appointments. Repeated phone calls at odd hours with confusion usually. Inappropriate behavior, clothing or speech. So maybe it's really warm outside and our loved one is wearing something heavy. Or conversely, it's cold outside and they're in a short sleeve shirt. And symptoms of depression. Symptoms of depression can be not depression, they can actually be dementia. Or symptoms of dementia can sometimes actually be depression, especially as we get older, because depression in older folks tends to affect their cognitive abilities. And so we want to make sure we rule those out. So these are some signs that someone we love may need help. Yes.
What about a big change in the personality, a person who's normally very difficult to get along with, all of a sudden becomes very easy to get along with?
Yeah, I would definitely see the doctor. That is a sign. Changes in personality.
Radical, yes. Almost 180
Yeah,
degrees.
radical changes especially. I would get a physical.
Okay.
I would go see the doctor, see what's going on.
Well, there are some other signs also. But,
right. And I will tell you that when we have more sudden changes, drastic changes, that's not like Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is this very slow,
progressive,
slow changes. But when there's really drastic changes, that it could be a number of things, but one thing it does lead me to is stroke.
Lead me down. Okay, that's so a person who'd have Alzheimer's and have a stroke and then have a drastic change in.
They can have both. That's
okay.
A really good question, Mr. Loomis, because people don't know that strokes or things can occur with Alzheimer's, that we can have cerebrovascular problems and have Alzheimer's at the same time. It's like one wasn't bad enough, right?
Yes,
and then
right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Yes, my pleasure. So what are normal changes in memory? Well, our thinking slows down. We're not as quick as we used to be. Now, I always tell people what we get in exchange for that is wisdom. Because as we get older, and I include myself in this, because these things start to change right at 40, right? 40 and keeps going. So our thinking slows down, but we get wisdom. We make really good judgments. We have a lot of experience that we can call upon to make good choices. But we're just not as quick as we used to be. We have sensory changes. Our hearing starts to change as we get older, our vision. We actually will have other changes in our sense of smell, even the sensitivity of our touch and things like that. And then we all may have, I know I have this about every day, difficulty finding words that I call the tip of the tongue phenomenon. And it never fails, as I'll be trying to think of that actress, and as soon as I'm away from whomever I was trying to think of it with, there it is. It comes right to me. So those are normal things, and things that we really shouldn't be that alarmed with. But let's talk about what's normal versus what's maybe not so normal. So normal is forgetting where you put your keys. Everybody's laughing because we do that pretty regularly. And abnormal is forgetting what your keys are used for. Normal, forgetting where you put your checkbook. Abnormal, forgetting which bank your money is in. Normal, forgetting what you ate for breakfast yesterday versus abnormal, forgetting what you ate 15 minutes ago. So this slide usually makes us all feel better, doesn't it? Normal, and I hear this one all the time, walking into a room and forgetting why you walked in there. That just means you've got a lot on your mind and you're distracted. But getting disoriented in your own home, that's a more serious sign. Jim.
Yeah, just a quickie. I have a series of memory lapses on mostly unimportant things. I can see a movie and 3 months later have no idea and watch it all over again. But in other situations, my memory's pretty darn good. Should I be concerned?
I'll tell you, it's always a good sign when you're concerned about your memory, because a hallmark sign of, say, dementia or Alzheimer's in particular is that people often don't recognize they have a memory problem. So they deny they have a memory problem. So it's always a good sign to me when someone says to me, I think I have a problem with my memory. And then 9 times out of 10, they really don't. It's an interesting thing when we're talking about dementia, is that usually it's a family member that's noticing these changes and brings it to our attention. People don't usually present by themselves. So the fact that you're aware of it is a very good sign. But if you decide that maybe it's a little more than that, you should see your physician and talk to him about or her about your concerns. So getting lost in an unfamiliar place, that's normal. But getting lost in your own neighborhood, that's abnormal. And I like this last one. Forgetting where you parked your car in a mall lot versus forgetting that you drove to the mall. And it always reminds me of a story years ago when I went to an Angels game. I'm from Orange County originally, and I went to go see the Angels play and forgot where I parked my car. Have you, you've been to baseball games? What do you think I had to do?
Get your emergency.
Well, in the old days, we didn't have those. So I had to wait until almost everybody left. And then I found my car. And I was in my 20s, so, you gotta look at it. We all can lose our car once in a while. So what are some factors that affect memory? And this brings up, Jim, what you were saying, and things you might want to look at. Stress. Stress is very bad for our memory. It really is. It releases a hormone that's called cortisol, and cortisol affects our memory. It affects our memory centers, and we can see that after a year of prolonged stress that's unremitting, that people really have shrinkages in those areas of the brain that are responsible for memory, just due to stress. Anxiety, similarly, is not good for us. When we're anxious, we're not able to attend and form memories, so things aren't going to get stored into long-term memory. Illness. If we have some sort of an illness that we're dealing with, it's going to affect our memory. Fatigue. Actually, it's interesting, it's just one night of sleep deprivation. I've actually looked at some of the research on this, really affects our memory profoundly. And so I was interested, because I'm always interested in people's health and what they can do to fix that. And so there was actually research that showed that taking a nap was helpful. And I've been raised on the idea of power naps, these 20 to 30-minute naps. Well, the research didn't show that. Do you guys have any kind of an idea what kind of a nap the research showed would be effective to help restore memory?
2 hours.
10 minutes.
2 hours. Good job, Nancy. Yes. Good for you. Good for you. We should all take 2-hour naps. And then we could stay up later. And no, that's the American way. Alcohol. Alcohol is not good for memory. So, the American Medical Association will say you could have about 2 drinks a day. I think that's a lot. I still think that could be a lot. If you're having problems with your memory, I might lay off it for a while and see how it goes.
Dr. Lisa?
Yes?
Can they measure the amount of cortisol that you have in your system?
Yes, they can.
It is a quantifiable?
It is quantifiable. And that's research I plan to be doing down the road. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm not there yet, but we can actually measure it by just taking a little swab of the inside of your mouth. We can, a cheek swab. We can get salivary cortisol, or we can measure it using blood assays. So it's a really great way to quantify stress, isn't it? Yeah, because we like hard science. Yes, yeah. So it's really interesting, and it's an interesting fact that when you're talking about Alzheimer's caregivers, which I will talk about, cortisol also affects our ability to heal when we're ill. And so they wanted to look at healing and stress. And so they decided, let's go after a group that's really, really stressed out. Who could that be? And they said, well, let's go for the Alzheimer's caregivers. And they measured their cortisol, and then, imagine signing up for this study, they gave them a little burn. They actually gave them an abrasion, and they measured cortisol, and they measured how long it took to heal. And on average, Alzheimer's caregivers take about 6 times longer than average folks to heal and have elevated cortisol. So, yeah, we know stress impacts us and leaves us vulnerable to getting sick or not being able to heal or recover from other illnesses.
Is there a medication that deals specifically with cortisol? Is that what it's
Yeah, no magic bullet. A lifestyle plan. A lifestyle plan that reduces stress. I know. Yeah, not yet. But that'll probably be one day. But right now, it's all about lifestyle management. And that's a great deal of the work that we do in our research, is helping people to manage their stress. So yeah, it's really important, isn't it? Other factors that might affect your memory are high blood pressure. So you want to manage your blood pressure. Medications that you're taking. So you want to check with your pharmacist or your doctor about any side effects if you're having memory problems. Depression, like I said. Hypothyroidism, but also hyperthyroidism can affect our memory if you have too busy of a thyroid. Malnutrition, particularly if you have a thiamine deficiency. People that drink a lot and drink too much typically don't have enough thiamine in their diet, and so they will get a type of dementia that we call Wernicke's. Korsakoff's. Wernicke's is something else. That's a language center. Pardon me. Korsakoff's dementia. And so what we say is, let's go abstinent and let's check back in 9 to 12 months and see if we've recovered some functioning in terms of memory. And you can. So malnutrition will affect it. Yes.
Dr. I volunteer as a long-term care ombudsman, and we go into the
microphone on?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I volunteer as a long-term care ombudsman in the county, and we visit people in 6-bed, assisted living, skilled nursing, and particularly in the 6-bed facilities where there are not a lot of planned activities, and you could easily end up with, out of 6 people, 6 residents, you could have 3 that maybe started out with dementia. I've had family members ask me, it's almost noticeable, the mental decline of the ones who started out. Is that because they have rarely any real stimulation? I know some of them get depressed too, so that's just a really easy place, I guess, to get worse. Is that real dementia, or is that just related to lack of...
lack of stimulation will make us look cognitively more foggy and less alert and on the ball, and so it would be interesting. And there is some research that shows that if we really keep learning like a language or an instrument are particularly good for us, and keep doing mental exercises that will strengthen our memory and strengthen our cognitive abilities. So I would wonder myself about those people in those facilities and the lack of stimulation, if it's making them look duller than they really are. And so that's why it's lovely that we have great places like you have a lovely senior center here in Thousand Oaks, and Town Meets Gown, and all these lecture series and things that people can be active and participate in and keep stimulated and growing and using their brain. And it's funny because 20 years ago when I was first studying this, I used to give talks and I'd say, well, the brain is not a muscle. You can't exercise it. We didn't know. We have learned so much about the brain in the past 20 years. We now know, the brain actually does regenerate and can still develop connections and pathways in there and strengthen those. We used to think it was, one time, and if you damaged it, that was it. So we know so much more. So stimulation, thank you for bringing me back to that. I think I glossed over it. Yes, thank you. And then dehydration, which will often cause an acute delirium when people are dehydrated. And they will definitely, they'll hallucinate visually. They'll have all kinds of symptoms, and that needs to be treated in hospital to be rehydrated. But there are many, many, many reversible causes of memory loss, and so really what you need is a good physical. You need to work with your doctor and make sure that it's nothing that we can fix, and then if it is, then it goes on to be something else. And what that something else is would be dementia. And dementia is an umbrella term that we use to describe symptoms. And those are symptoms of problems with memory and language, judgment, and reasoning. So those 3 areas, memory, language, and then judgment and reasoning go together. And so if someone's having symptoms in those areas that are severe enough, it will warrant a diagnosis of dementia, and then there are many types of dementia. So I know people would say to me, I'll take a family history. There's no dementia in my family, but my grandpa was senile. And, right? And so it's very confusing. So senile just is an age modifier, and we don't ever use that anymore. Yes?
Yeah, doctor. What about the medication that tends to delay dementia, like Aricept or things like that?
In combination with Namenda is
effective?
It is very effective.
How long will it delay?
The research and what they can say is it's a year and a half. It's a short time span, but I can tell you that I know folks that have been taking it for 7 years, which Aricept has been around about that long. There was Cognex before then. And they're doing, they're still maintaining their functioning very well. So if you actually look at their brain isn't changed, but their functioning level is for those medications. So it doesn't, it's an interesting thing. It doesn't stop the progression of a disease, but it stops us seeing it in terms of their behavior or their functioning. So they're very, again, 20 years ago we didn't have those. And interesting new medications I'm sure will be coming on the market very soon. There's 80 clinical trials, phase 3, which means they're actually using them with people in the United States right now. So, which I always like to keep my eye on. And you can always go to clinicaltrials.gov and see what's out there. And we live in such a wonderful area because we have UCLA and we have so many wonderful sites where people can enroll in clinical trials and get cutting-edge treatment. So Alzheimer's disease is certainly the most common, the most prevalent of all the types of dementia. And it's a disease that attacks the brain, and it's characterized by something called amyloid plaques, and so we can see those on the brain, and neurofibrillary tangles. So the fibers that connect together to transmit information through our nervous system in the brain will become tangled. Like tangles, it looks like tangles in your hair, but on a microscopic level. It's somewhat generalized, but it predominates in the temporal and the parietal lobes, which is where our memory centers primarily are, as well as some of our spatial information. It's irreversible, it's progressive, and it's degenerative. Memory loss, particularly short-term, is a hallmark symptom, as is difficulty with language and words. So, on average, Alzheimer's disease can be 3 years to 20 years. That's the range. You can live 20 years with Alzheimer's. It's very slow, and it's really only fatal in the very end because people can't feed themselves and meet their basic needs, and they usually develop a secondary infection like a pneumonia that will be fatal. The average span between 3 and 20 years is actually 8 years. So, and what we think is that it's actually present. Like if I was going to have Alzheimer's disease, it's already started in my brain. So it's starting much earlier. So probably in the future we're going to look at identifying it at a much earlier stage so we can intervene much earlier. And they're doing some of that with looking at they can actually measure amyloid in your spinal fluid. And I know there's a study at UCLA. It's just not a lot of people sign up to have a spinal tap. Yeah, I admire people who participate in research, right? Yeah, that's kind of tough. So this is a normal slice of brain. This is someone who didn't have any Alzheimer's disease and passed away, and they took this, and now here's what it looks like for someone that did have Alzheimer's disease. And so what you see is that there was incredible cell death, and that this is a much smaller brain mass than we want. So yeah, see the big spaces? That's where tissue used to be. So that's someone that had it. And I am not sure on this slide how long the disease was, but it had progressed severely. So there are other types of dementia, the second most common being vascular dementia. So those are things related to arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, closing up of the arteries, diminished blood flow in our carotids, things like that. So somehow that we're not getting enough oxygen and nutrition. Yes?
To a certain extent, vascular disease should be remediatable, and should it not, with blood thinners and things like that.
That's why it's important to get a good diagnosis, because you don't want to be treated for Alzheimer's if it's this.
If it's simply rotor-rooter in the carotid.
That's right. You want to know. You want to know exactly, do I need to be on blood thinners or Lipitor, my cholesterol-inhibiting medications, things like that. Absolutely. There are different types. Parkinson's disease can have dementia associated with it, but not always. But if we get it at more an older age, we're more likely to have memory problems. Younger folks like Michael J. Fox, he might not ever have any kind of cognitive impairment related to it. Frontotemporal dementias, those predominate in this area of the brain where all our judgment and reasoning is. And so people like that tend to be much more disinhibited. You may have someone who was very proper and appropriate and now chasing the maid around the room or cursing and doing all kinds of things. Yeah, that's a type of dementia that's usually very hard on the family. Yeah, yes, very, yeah. Lewy body dementia is another type of dementia that is, most people think it's somewhat a variant of Alzheimer's, but it's Lewy bodies that are present in the brain. And that's one of those super baddies, I guess I would say, because not only do you have the deterioration like in Alzheimer's, but also you're getting some subcortical involvement. So people with Lewy body will have motor problems. They'll fall quite often. It's also marked by visual hallucinations that are quite uncomfortable. Has a much more rapid progression than Alzheimer's.
Dr. Lisa?
Yeah.
How do you determine the Lewy body? I mean, is that a definable disease during a person's life, or is it after the effect?
It's an educated guess, and then post-mortem. Yeah, because we can't biopsy the brain. So, yeah, you're right. So, but it's a cluster of symptoms, and then post-mortem we can they can do necroscopic studies and look and find the Lewy bodies present. So, and then Pick's disease, which that's something you'll have in the brain that are called Pick's bodies. It's another type of frontal dementia, and it's much less common. I think it's about 5% of the population, but I want to bring it up. So, and then there's more, but these are just some of the ones that I wanted to tell you about. So, yeah.
Are people frequently
Microphone?
Are people frequently just diagnosed with dementia and they don't go any further? I mean, just because I visit a lot of these places that do have the memory wards, and then we have one that has two levels, or three different levels. Do they generally try to make the distinction between which one they have, or do sometimes doctors just kind of say you have dementia and that's all they do?
Well, I would say that the gold standard is you want to have a full physical workup. So you want all the blood work, you want all that. They usually do brain imaging, MRIs, PET scans. You want to look and see what you can. I know I can speak for the VA. What we do is I do the neuropsychological testing, so I can actually measure things like memory, verbal memory, visual memory, and that can help the doctor and guide him in what the actual diagnosis is. So because there are different treatments available for different types of dementia, I think that it's preferable to have an actual diagnosis. I do know that here's another statistic. I love statistics. They say that we forget 96% of what's said to us in a doctor's office. So I think it's not unusual that a family might walk out and they just heard dementia, and then they sort of shut off and weren't able to hear anymore. But, it is different types of treatment. I mean, Parkinson's disease, we treat that, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a psychologist, but it's treated with levodopa. They give that to remediate the problems that the person's having, and so it is important to have a good diagnosis. Yeah, Jim.
Well, I'm just curious. I've heard over the years certain things like doing crossword puzzles, learning a new language, etc., might stave off this. Or is there research to indicate, or what do you have there?
Well, yes. In a way, there is research. It's called a reserve factor. So basically, the more you do, and you get your brain, generating neurons and pathways and connecting, that even if you have Alzheimer's and you've done a lot, say like gotten a lot of education, the disease will go more slowly and show up later in people like that. So there is evidence that you build up that reserve capacity. And then things you do that would deplete your reserve capacity, head injuries. That's a big one. You really want to protect this brain up here. And so, and unfortunately, it's one of those things where most people get head injuries when they're young and impulsive and invincible, and then it comes back when we're older that we've damaged and diminished our reserve capacity. And absolutely, playing an instrument, learning a new language, crossword, Sudoku, which I can't do to save my life, things like that, being stimulated and active, it's good for you. And physical exercise. There is clear research that physical exercise helps. So, absolutely. So, who are the caregivers? Who are taking care of these people? Well, we define that as anyone who helps someone who is in some way unable to take care of themselves. And we think it's about 1 in every 4 households in the United States is taking care of someone. Now, it's now.
Okay.
But that's for all kinds of illnesses, isn't
Yes, yeah, across the board. Not just seniors, across the board. Yeah, right now they say there's about 1 for every person that needs a caregiver. There's about 22, and we think that by the year 2050 that will be about 2. So I know I'm Chicken Little running around saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling. We need to pay attention to this, but because of the numbers of people that are aging and things that are changing, we're going to have a crisis. There won't be enough people around to provide care.
That's an order of magnitude change.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Have to turn on your microphone.
From 20 to 2.
Doctor, well, I forgot what I was going to say. I'll get right back to you.
Okay. Oh.
What I remember now what I was going to say. Are incidents of dementia increasing, and do we expect the incoming boomer generation to be a large participant in this?
It's a very good question.
So is it actually increasing, or is it just that we know what to call it?
Well, it's increasing because of our great health care, that we live longer. What used to happen, say at the beginning of the 20th century, was if you lived to be very old, because our lifespan has almost doubled. If you lived to be very old, you were very hardy stock, right? You were made out of good stuff. You were resilient because there weren't wonderful drugs. There wasn't even penicillin and things like that around to help you. And so what you had is you had a very few old people that were real tough. But now what you've had with the advent of medicine and all the things that we're able to do now is we're all getting old. I mean, my doctor keeps telling me I'm going to be 116. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'll have to take up golf or tennis. And so as we live longer, Alzheimer's in particular is a disease of aging. In fact, Alan Roses, who's the doctor who was at Duke University that really was a pioneer in understanding the genetics of what's going on in Alzheimer's, he said if we all lived to be, 120, we would all have the disease. And so basically, you don't want to outlive the disease at this point, because we don't have a cure for it. So we are aging, and we are more susceptible. Yeah, Mel, you want to ask a question?
Given what you just said, then it seems to me the impact would be on the need that, we all talk about, in the future they're not going to need a lot of, not assisted living, but skilled nursing facilities. And what you're saying is, the bad news is we probably will need.
The bad news is we probably will, or we'll invest in research like mine that really tries to help families so that they can take good care of their loved one. Because caregiving is a pretty nasty occupation. It's up there in terms of dangerousness with firefighting.
Is there a federal agency at NIH that's working on NIMM or something?
It's, yes, it's, what is our federal? I know because I've been in contact with them. And what they're doing is there's a lot of stimulus money coming from the federal government down to the states. And in California, then it goes to our county areas on our Ventura County Area Agency on Aging, AAA. And they're really trying to get great programs out there. For example, Savvy Caregiver is a program that came down federal government to us here, and Powerful Tools for Caregivers is another one through stimulus money. And I know that there's some recent laws that have been enacted in terms of caregivers, and of course President Obama would like to have long-term care be part of our health care reform. So there's a lot of changes. There still needs to be more. There needs to be more. And projections are we won't have enough nurses and healthcare professionals. Yeah.
I also understand that in the same vein, I just read something today on the California healthcare website that the number of geriatricians is going to be in very short supply.
Very short supply.
So.
Yes. Yeah, and I know.
Would probably be a geriatrician that would recommend you to go to the next step to see some doctor.
Well, geriatricians, because they have that specialized training, they really understand the needs of people who are older, and that is a shame. And, with Medicare, we're having problems because of the projected Medicare cuts. There was an article in the Star, was it a week ago, about primary care doctors versus specialties. Yeah, it's hard to attract people into this job, and then it's a hard job, and then it's not very financially lucrative for them. So, and they're so good, and we're so lucky we have some good people in our county, and but it is an issue. Dave, did you want to ask me a question?
Yeah, in thinking of the boomers with the behavior that a lot of them had, do you think it's going to be more of an aberration as far as any kind of studies you do on let's say primarily the 60s and 70s? Is going to be different from not just what's gone on in the past, but even what may go in the future, the kids who grew up in the 90s, let's say?
Well, that's such a good question, because my research, which I haven't really talked about yet, is on the computer. It's online. So that's why we think it's so innovative. And that's a very big difference in the generations, isn't it? Yeah, is that it's online or either by telephone. And I imagine that more and more of that is going to come about with our aging population and our caregivers, that the younger our Gen X population, and then our Gen Ys. I guess with Gen Ys we could tweet. I don't know how to tweet, but Maybe I'll learn, what does to text each other. How are you doing taking care of grandma? But our Gen X and even our boomers, we're thinking are going to be pretty computer savvy. And it's funny because my intervention is a chat. And it's not, and I've gone out to give talks and people say, well, why don't you use Skype? And I was embarrassed because I didn't even know what Skype was. They say, well, that's how I talk to my grandchildren. Yeah, so I think that the way we bring resources is going to change. Absolutely, absolutely. And the reason this project, which, research takes a long time, it was in the making for many, many years before it got going. We were looking at what were the obstacles that caregivers were having to getting out and coming to groups. And the Alzheimer's Association here in Ventura County gave me the statistic that they believe only 6% of caregivers ever go to a support group. So that's pretty low. So people aren't going, and we thought, well, why is that? Well, it's really hard when you're caring for someone who has dementia. How do you leave them? Do you have respite? What kind of resources do you have? What if you have, the sandwich generation? You have children of your own and you're caring for your aging parents, things like that. There's also the issue that not all support groups are equal and there aren't always well-trained professionals available. So it was out of that and sort of the idea of what's going to be there in the future and what will people benefit from that the research project that I'm on came about with the internet or the telephone. And so I say caregivers drive the care, and it's important that caregivers don't run out of gas. They really are important, and I think that with in-home supportive services being cut, with our caregiver resource centers taking a 75% reduction last year and probably with this year's budget going away completely, dwindling resources available to support families families are important. And families save us money. The longer that people stay out of long-term care, the more savings there is. I know that they said that if in-home supportive services goes away, that we'll actually pay out 3 times that much in Medi-Cal because people won't be able to keep their loved one at home. Yeah.
Do you have a scary statistic about life expectancies or, let's say, morbidity of caregivers?
Yeah. If you're a caregiver, you're probably taking about 7 to 10 years off of your own life.
Good.
That's a lot, isn't it?
What are your chances if you're a caregiver of outliving the person that you're giving care to?
The actual fact of the matter is that the majority of caregivers die before the person that they're providing care to.
Thank you. I wanted to hear you say that.
Yeah, it's about 64% will die before the person they're providing care to, and that's a catastrophe.
Yes. Yeah, we're dealing in one group that I advise with the problems of whom should we reach out to. And it seems quite clear to me that we need to develop some sort of an in-reach to caregivers. I had heard this said before. I was pretty sure that the fact was that if you are giving care, you probably are going to, there's a good chance that you will die before the person that you're giving care passes on, but I wasn't sure you take how many years off your life by giving
7
care?
to 10.
7 to 10. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's quite a job, isn't it? And you don't get paid. Yeah. Mel?
It seems to me that something that you might think about either for another PhD thesis, not that you don't need another one.
For my public health degree, I'm thinking about it.
Or somewheres get either the state, federal, or government to do a cost-benefit analysis on if you spend X dollars here on in-home care, that kind of stuff, what will you save on the other end? The same thing on the preventive we're now going to the Stanford preventive medicine models, and so somehow with the computers available today and the kind of information being able to handle very robust analysis, it seems to me that would be a study that should be made if you can get the politicians to go along with it, I guess, is the problem. Because somewhere along the line, there's got to be a cost-benefit thing here.
And bottom line is that that's an attention getter when we start talking about the financial aspect. Yes, yeah, that's a great idea.
Somebody
And
ought to do a thesis on that.
it's like you can read my mind. This is my passion. I love this, and I love working with these people who are giving so much of themselves. They're really pretty amazing. They give too much, obviously, right? 7 to 10 years of your life. So what are results of caregiver burnout? You're right ahead of me. Poor mental and physical health, increased death rates, which we know it's very scary, misuse of drugs and alcohol, chronic stress and depression. In fact, I talked about their decreased wound healing and highest rates of depression, about over 50%, 50 to 60. Some studies say 80% of caregivers of seniors with dementia have a clinical depression. Family and marital conflicts, early placement in a facility, overreacting to situations and feelings of guilt, loss of compassion. I mean, you get compassion fatigue. Everyone's prone to that. You give it all away, and you go, and it's empty. Feeling helpless, feeling resentful, isolation and withdrawal. I love the idea, Mr. Loomis, what you said about reaching out, you called it an in-reach?
Yes, we frequently talk about outreach. So let's outreach to somebody in Louisiana. God bless them. They've had a ton of trouble. But in-reach is taking a look at your affinity group and saying, what am I going to do in my affinity group? If there is a correlative increase in this affinity group in age, entering elderhood, so that we're going to have by 2020, 25% of the people in this city who are now in that age group. The correlative increase says that we're going to have an increase unless we have a big change in medicine in Alzheimer's or dementia needing caregivers. That means a correlative increase in the problems that caregivers face, and we're not prepared to do that at all. I don't know any place in the county that's prepared to do that at all. I only know 1 or 2 places in the county that are really thinking about doing something like that. And this is a progressive county.
It is. And this is a progressive city.
This is a very progressive city. So this is something that's going to be big on our plates.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. These people need a village. They're very isolated. It's a very isolating thing to do, to be a caregiver. They're not going to eat well. They're not sleeping well. They're not able to laugh and feel joy. They're feeling stress and irritability. So here's the Caregiver Quiz, and I won't go over the whole thing, but you see some of the questions that it asks, and this is something I got from the Alzheimer's Association. It's difficult when I go out and I give this talk to caregivers, and this can be very emotionally provocative when people start seeing it in black and white. And then you can see, how did you do?
That certainly skews negative. Do you have any positive potential questions up there? I mean, all the questions are negative.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, this is just a little quiz. I promise you that in my research, my instruments are a little less biased. But this is like a bring your point home kind of a talk when I bring this out. So, are you in need of a fill-up? Because I'm usually out there trying to say, come on, let's take care of you. And most caregivers, they're all about denying their needs so that they can be taking care of someone else. So people usually like that. If only that worked. Right. So what can you actually do? Support. It does take a village. Educate yourself and your loved ones, gather resources, consult, get help, consult with the Alzheimer's Association or various agencies, take good care of yourself, physical, mental, emotional, and be kind to yourself. There's no such thing as perfect. And then, little plug for my research. We are really trying to come up with an online education and support program for caregivers that can be manualized, replicated, and easily disseminated, which of course would start with the VA. The project I work on is funded by a resource grant through the VA, but it would be available to the public. It's a randomized trial where we're comparing 6 months of caregiver online education and support that they access at home to a minimal support, which is brief phone calls. We look at the patient and caregiver variables at the beginning, which is baseline 6 months and 12 months. Both the patient and caregiver provide research consent, but the patient doesn't come online. The entire intervention is aimed at the caregiver. But we look at patient outcome data to see how successful we're being. Hi. And professionally facilitated chats held in usually the evening are probably the most unique aspect of this intervention. So you have 2 psychologists that participate in making sure that people have the most up-to-date information. We have a geropsychiatrist to come on. It says 30 minutes, but she does often stay on for an hour answering questions. We have 12 sessions of formatted educational materials, including streaming videos, and we were lucky enough to have Gary Small from UCLA do some of our educational videos. And we really try and provide good education. So it has 3 components. It's education, which we know that the research shows is important, support, and then self-care, which is the Stanford model, is self-care, and so it's all kind of lifestyle changes. I'm a big fan of that. Privacy is a key. People use nicknames to enter the website and the chats. We have multiple levels of password protection. Our website is administered, that's not a word, administered by UCLA, but I just made that up. Sometimes I do that. I'm a doctor. People don't question me. Oh, okay. So we don't use people's real names. We do protect their privacy. Who can participate? The individual who is helping to care for the person with a memory problem. AD stands for Alzheimer's disease, and ADRD is Alzheimer's disease or related disorder. So basically that encompasses almost every kind of dementia. They must have access to a computer with an internet connection and be between the ages of 18 and 85. And yes, we have 85-year-old caregivers. And the person, the care recipient, has to have a diagnosis of AD or a related disorder. They have to have ongoing access to medical care. We don't change their care in any way. They have to be able to provide consent. They reside in the community, not supervised housing, and be between the ages of 50 and 95. And yes, I've had 95-year-olds. So that's who can participate. If anyone wants to contact me, they can use that email address or that phone number. That's the phone number at the VA. And I'm happy to answer questions.
If you're going to live to be 116, why the upper age limit on your research?
You want to know why? That is such a good question, and it's not my idea. When you're looking at people at that upper age limit, it's our Institutional Review Board, IRB committee. They get together and they say, we don't want you, Lisa, out there exploiting older people and taking advantage of them with your charm. They're more protected, so that's why the age limit is 95. When you get above 95, you have to, and not that I would go to the IRB and I would ask for a special, dispensation if I had someone that I could get in the study. It's very hard for me to say no. I want to help everybody, but that's the reason. It's ethics.
Yeah, Dr. Lisa, is this just for veterans, or is this for the general population?
That's the beauty of it, too, is that actually I'm able to take non-veterans. And I have a lot of I've collected a lot of wonderful resources for the greater Los Angeles area, which for us goes all the way to San Luis Obispo County. So I go all the way up there, and we go all the way to West Covina, in fact, some into Orange County.
How long is the study going to stay open?
I will be able to continue taking people until September of this year. And then after that, I'm going to have to wrap it up, and then we'll analyze the data.
All right. Good, thank you.
Doctor?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay.
Please.
It's on. And I'm not even soft-spoken at all, but the data, it sounds like it's very difficult. And I was a caregiver in my 50s for someone, and it truly was the most difficult time of my entire life. So I can't even imagine at 85 trying to do what I did. But is it really better? Is there enough difference for the patient to try to keep them at home with a family caregiver if there is any way that they could afford to be in hopefully one of the more comfortable facilities? The VA facility here is wonderful. There are a lot of really good facilities for people with dementia and levels of dementia. Does it benefit you that much if you're trying to do it, but you could put them in a facility, because it takes a toll then on that caregiver so much?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think there is a time and a place that people have to make those hard decisions, and I'm there to support them when they need to. And every case is unique and individual. But it is, for a lot of families, very cost prohibitive to do that. And then, of course, looking as a society and the numbers that are coming, especially by the year 2050, where are we going to, we don't have places, and it will, they're talking about it will bankrupt Medicare. I mean, there's not enough younger ones behind us that are going to be able to afford this. So, but I think you're right. I love my families, and I don't want to overburden them. I want to bring supports to them, and care recipients can do quite well in transitioning to facilities. So it's a good point. Yeah, because I would hate to ever make anyone feel guilty or bad that they had to make that tough decision. Yes, right. Good point. Mel, did you have a question?
Do you have two things? Have you looked at the differences in socioeconomic situations, that type of thing, how that impacts it? And two, have any data on how the boomer generation now having to care for their parents at some point, what kind of impact that is?
I don't have at my fingertips good financial data. I actually belong to several listservs, and I bet some of you do too, like Family Caregiver Alliance and things like that. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to get involved with the city of Camarillo, is I want to understand and get involved with the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging, is I really want to understand the financial implications. But what I do understand is that it's pretty dire. It's going to really affect, I'm not trying to be selfish, but let's say my generation, because my generation and those behind me aren't savers. And they're not like our, our best generation and our boomer, even our older boomers who were raised with those kind of principles. We know that most people actually carry debt rather than resources. So I think that we're looking at a society that's going to be in great need, and I want to be there figuring out where it's going to come from. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Doctor. It's absolutely riveting. All right, we'll now move on to our committee reports. And David, you have something on transportation, I believe?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jim. I mean, that would be a tough act to follow if I could remember what it was. Bump. Come on, work with me. Jeez. Yeah. we got a moment here. Well, while you're doing that, I'll go into some of the other facets of what I was going to talk about, Francine. Just let me know when you're ready. Okay. What we wanted to do, and what Francine's getting set up for, is that the transportation has had a new website, revised website, let me say that. And I think it's a lot more friendly and a lot more informative. So we wanted to go through that as it relates to transportation. Along that line, I wanted to let you know that come mid-June, we're going to see the reintroduction of the computer reservation system. I know a lot of you folks are groaning because you remember 2 years ago how very bad it was. I mean, that's all you can call it. And but now they've really gone through a re-energization of it, and it's going to be quite something. I did want to let you folks know that probably initially, until they get your profile established in the database, your first 1 or 2 calls may take some time, but please bear with them so that they can get all your proper, correct information coming down. Oh, all right. So please understand that and be patient, but this is for the benefit of the advanced, or being able to have the dial-a-ride system more efficient. Dial-a-ride users will still be able to make same-day reservations. However, the folks who have advanced reservations, it will, in a sense, have a priority because they are already established, and a person who requests a same-day reservation may have to wait up to an hour before they can be picked up. So it is a benefit to begin considering and using the advanced reservation system. Information is available at the Transit Center, and if you are a regular Dial-A-Ride user, I would encourage you to establish your database so that we can bring you online much quicker and make it much easier to use. The folks over at the Transit Center informed me that they've got 4 new fleets that are going to be added by the end of this month. 4 more new vehicles, excuse me, and these are all CNG devices, and so at this point, every vehicle in the Dial-A-Ride fleet will be 18 months or younger. So it's, the DAR riders are going to be riding in style with the new vans. Did want to remind our folks, our listeners, that transit training, fixed transit training, is still available. This is what we talked about several months ago, where we can have people come out to your home to help you understand the fixed route system. It's not just the idea of being able to understand the system, but looking at maybe being able to enjoy the Caneo on a little bit different level, of sort of just enjoying a ride, if you wish, and not having to worry about the trouble of transportation of your own car. They'll actually go with you on a proposed medical route, or to a shopping store. Whatever your preference is, they will help you find the route, actually go with you on the bus, and stick with you until you've made the complete transition with the bus system. Again, information is available at the Transit Center, and you can contact Angel Arizola at the Transit Center to learn more about this. His phone number is 805-375-5467.
Thank you, David. If we get our little tech thing worked out, let's get back for that website review. But in the meantime, let's move on to health. Leonard, you have something on medical identity theft?
Yes, sir, I do, and I hesitate to bring it up because all of a sudden I'm supposed to talk about something that is a boogeyman for all of us. Do you remember, well, everybody out there had a mom or a dad that said, if you're not good, there's a little guy that lives under the bed that's going to come and get you tonight. Or he lived in the closet or someplace like that. My wife and I didn't have to worry about that because we moved so many times. The children were absolutely convinced that the boogeyman followed us. Knowledge is power, and I'd like to give you some power if I can. And I'd like to give you some power in the area of medical identity theft. Here is Can you come in on a little bit, TOTV? If not, it doesn't make any difference anyway because it's awfully hard to understand. Oh, yeah, they're going to come in. That's very nice. Thank you very much. Everybody who is watching this program either gets one of these things periodically or maybe has a chance to review one of these things for their parents or people for whom they give care. Medical identity theft is quite a lot different in its occurrence, how it happens, despite some pretty good regulations and laws at the federal level, and its effect on us. If I have my credit card stolen, I'm pretty much limited to a $50 liability on my credit card. If somebody grabs my medical identity and uses it to defraud an insurance company, I can rapidly reach the catastrophic cap. And then if I trot in while this is going on and try to get some care from my insurance company, find that I've reached the cap and I'm not going to get care. And it's a very, very difficult kind of thing to get out of. Is it scary? Yeah, it's plenty scary. But the plain fact of the matter is that each and every one of us within the sound and visage of me can take care of themselves, ourselves. Boy, that was a complicated thing. We can all take care of ourselves if we just review our Medicare statements of care every time we get one. And, in fact, at the bottom of it is this statement. This is not a bill. Keep this notice for your records. I implore you, I urge you, I beg you, if I could bribe you, please pay attention to what that says. This is not a bill. Keep this notice for your records. And the second part of my imploring, bribing, begging is you can go over it yourself, or if you have someone who is watching your bills for you right now, have them go over it. Look for the obvious things. There would be no reason at all for me to be seeing an OBGYN. Obviously, they've got the wrong person. So if there's an OBGYN charge on Len's Medicare statement, it's got to be wrong. And those things sound like they're absurd, but that is the other end of what can possibly happen to you if you have your medical identity stolen. Comes generated a second set of records. You go to the hospital for a routine appendicitis. Kind of unusual at our age, but it could happen. Doctor pulls your records during the workup and says, you don't have an appendix. You had it taken out 30 years ago. Because guess what? Somebody is posing as you. So it makes really, really important sense to be aware of every piece of paper that comes out from Medicare and your supplement, whichever organization that is. What happens if you get in trouble with it? What happens if somebody steals your medical identity? Actually, there are a couple of ways you can get out of it, but it's time consuming. It always begins with a police report. The second thing it's always going to involve is a copy of your medical records. Now, copies of medical records, your records belong to you. You have a right to them. However, if you ask your physicians, at my age, I have a team that's bigger than Verizon following me around. I have 7 different specialties going to see me this lucky them month. The records get to be voluminous, and so you may have to pay for them sheet by sheet. But if you do, they can charge you a reasonable price, whatever reasonable is. Even if it's 100 sheets and it was $100, then you have a set of records that you can trot around with you. Next time you see a physician and say, these are my records. Please be sure that whatever you're using on me accurately reflects what is in these records. You have a right to demand that, and you should do it. So, It's scary, and it's time-consuming, and you probably are going to need somebody to go to bat for you to go through all the crazy copying of paperwork and all the rest of that. The plain fact of the matter is you can recover from it, and the bigger fact of the matter is that if you pay attention to this stupid little Medicare summary notice, which I can't interpret either because it always charges 10 times what I know is going to get paid by Medicare. I've never been able to figure that out. That's fair. 2 master's degrees, what did they count for? All you have to do is read it yourself, look for the obvious inaccuracies, and if something happens, make a police report. And you should also call this phone number. Gee, really interesting and easy. Federal Trade Commission 1-877, that's easy, ID theft. 1-877 ID as an identification theft. Jim?
Leonard, yes. I noticed that most of that information deals with having already been hit and you find out about it. Are there ways to maybe cut down the odds of getting your medical identity taken away? Or?
Yeah, there sure are. And the reason why I didn't pile them on at the beginning, I wanted to get crystal clear the business about taking a look at your summary notice. We need. Remember, I bet you everybody out there at one time or another had their name, address, phone number, social security number, and a couple of other numbers on their checks. And unfortunately, some of our medical caregivers, front offices, require that kind of information in great detail from us, particularly if we're new to the practice. There's no reason for them to know how many children I have if we're dealing me for heart disease. And they don't need their names. They sure don't need their social security numbers. I'm not even really sure that they need my wife's social security number. Whom do they notify in case of emergency? Well, a person's name and their good phone number ought to be good enough, and that's all the identification. The point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes we get a 3 or 4 page form that asks all kinds of personal and family information that physicians and other kinds of caregivers just flat don't need to give good care. And I think it's an artifact when we felt that we needed to know as much as we could about somebody in order to give them care. Just don't need to. So, big question. 2 sentences, very short. Why? And I'm uncomfortable with that. Prove it. I guess that's 3 sentences. Don't give any more information than your caregiver absolutely needs to have, and question every bit of information that you do give. The reason for that, Jim, is that somebody with your Social Security number and a background like that is in a wonderful position to go into the business of not only stealing your medical identity, but going onto the market and generating an entirely different identity. It's sort of, going under deep cover, getting a deep cover story. Yes, ma'am? My doctor asked me for ID. Yes, and that's, you know what? And Francine says her doctor asks her for ID. Wouldn't it be neat if every time we went into the doctor's office, we could say, why haven't you asked me for my ID to see if I'm the person I purport to be? And that's another thing that we could do to prevent it.
I believe Harry has a question as well.
I don't have a question. I have a couple of comments. Number one, when I get questionnaires like you've described, I refuse to give that information, and I've never been called on it. All they want is the pertinent information, which I give. Number two, when you get your statement of benefits from the Social Security Department, sometimes it's very unclear as to who the provider is, and you have to do a little research to make sure it's you. And with a little more clarity, I think the bill would be, or the invoice would be more understandable.
You know, you make 2 excellent points, Harry. The the business about the clarity of the bill is something that absolutely befuzzles me. And a statement that goes along with the bill is, as you exit, a lot of my caregivers are wonderful, and they'll say, fine, we'll see you in 6 months. I would prefer them to give me a statement of charges at that particular point in time, even if I'm not going to pay for them, so that I know precisely what I need to look for on the Medicare bill. That way I can compare the two. It is both a benefit and a bane to be covered by TRICARE in my case, because my supplement tends to duplicate, and on the one hand, on the other hand, it gives me a really good cost check. Nicely put, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Martin?
Unfortunately, in its infinite wisdom, the Medicare people decided to use your Social Security number as your Medicare ID number. So all of us are carrying around in our wallets that red, white, and blue Medicare card, and right on it is your Social Security number. So what I do, and what I recommend everybody do, is you make a copy of that card. Black out at least half of the numbers on that card, and that's what you keep in your wallet. And I've had no trouble using that blacked out card wherever I go.
No, because you can...
Because then they'll say, what's your number? You give them the number.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. And the first time I went to do that, I actually went into the local hospital here. It was to have some kind of a blood test. And I handed it to the laboratory clerk in the front there. And she said, oh, you blacked out that number. That's a very good idea. She took it, no problem at all.
You can't see it, but yes, that's what I've done on these things too.
You've got to do it. Yeah. Well, on that thing, of course,
you have to destroy this because it has your Social Security number. It means that you really should shred it.
They blacked out half. They only used the last 3.
They're only now using the last 4. Your final 4.
Okay.
But for a while ago, 2 years ago, I believe they still use the whole.
For a while they
number.
did, but they've learned, and now nowadays they don't. Just about everybody blocks out your number now.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Leonard. That was a very informative report. Let's move on to fraud. And, Martin, I think you have something on elder abuse?
Yeah, elder abuse is a really big problem. And there are actually 2 types of elder abuse. There's the financial abuse and there's physical abuse. And physical abuse can include mental abuse. Now, the physical abuse can occur in the home or in a care facility and may come from a paid caregiver or a family member. Now, the county has ombudsmen who visit the care facilities and talk to the patients there, and if they do feel there is something wrong, they will talk to the staff, and if necessary, they'll file a complaint with the authorities. But nothing can replace the visits from a patient's families. If you have a relative in a care facility, you should visit them often. If you suspect abuse, you can call Adult Protective Services at, the number is 654-3200, and they're part of the district attorney's office, and they will prosecute offenders. Elder abuse is a felony, and the abusers can get jail time. If you have a neighbor who you think is being abused, you can call the police. They have officers who are trained to conduct what they call a health and welfare check. They're trained to detect signs of elder abuse when they visit someone's home. And often they don't find a problem, but it's better to be safe than sorry. If you think the situation is dangerous, the police have a rapid response unit that can act in any emergency. Now, financial abuse can vary from a caregiver taking someone's credit card without their permission to stealing their home or their savings. Often the abuser could be a family member or a friend, and their activities may not even be illegal. There was a case where a daughter had her mother add her name to the deed to her home, and she may have had very good reason for doing that. What she left out was that when her mother died, the daughter would own the home, freezing out her brother and sisters. Now, it's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. There's no law against it, but is it really right? everyone, young or old, should have two pieces of paper, a will and a power of attorney. Now, a will simply tells people how you want your assets given out after you die. And the power of attorney gives someone the authority to handle your affairs when you are no longer capable of doing so. You can do these things yourself, and there are forms available on the internet and in office supply stores, but I recommend that you get a lawyer experienced in these matters to help you out to do these papers. The lawyer will ask you questions and present hypothetical situations that you might not think of by yourself. Now, picking the person to give the power of attorney is not going to be easy. It has to be someone that you absolutely trust, because you're giving away a lot of authority there. But at least what you're doing is you're giving someone that you know, rather than a court or a greedy relative, to handle your affairs when you are no longer able to do so. A good source of help in these matters is the Financial Abuse Specialty Team at 798-4684.
Say it again.
798-4684.
Any questions or comments? Thank you very much, Martin. All right, let's move on to legislation. Nick?
Yes, if you can hear my voice now, that probably means that you're not in a coma, and you certainly must know that there's an election coming up next Tuesday. If you have an absentee ballot in your possession that you haven't mailed back, please study it carefully, fill it out, and put it in the mail. If not, please go to your polling place and likewise study the ballot carefully and vote accordingly. It's in a democracy such as ours, it's your right to vote, and it's also your responsibility to vote. And if you need a more selfish motivation to cast your ballot, this is a midterm primary election. The voter turnout's likely to be much less than it is during a presidential election. If, for example, it's 1/3 of the number of people that showed up 2 years ago for the presidential election, it's like you're getting 3 votes instead of 1. So make it count this time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Next is the Senior of the Year announcement from Nancy.
Okay. You still have time to get your tickets for tomorrow night's Senior of the Year dinner, where this year we're honoring 5 outstanding nominees: Jane Da Silva, Porter Ellis, Tom Garcia, Julia Hans, and Pat Ciano, all nominated by the agencies that they volunteer for. And having met every one of them, I can tell you each one of them would deserve this honor. The dinner will be tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m. at the Goebel Center. The tickets are currently on sale at Goebel, and it's not just to honor these people. It's also can be a very fun evening. It's $5. The Elks Lodge is catering it. There is music and entertainment. It should just be a really fun time. So I'd ask everybody to go over to Goebel this afternoon, tomorrow morning, pick up your tickets, and we will see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Next on our agenda, the Senior Adult Master Plan. No?
Thank you, Martin. Just to recap a little bit before we introduce our speaker today on the master plan. We're now in the next phase of the Senior Adult Master Plan. We have, as you recall, in October 2009, City Council approved SAMP, the Senior Adult Master Plan, and right after that, we formed 6 SAMP implementation committees. And over the past 5 months, we have had the team leaders representing each of those committees give progress reports on how things have been going. The initial strategic implementation plan that's been put together by the 6 teams from the 6 subcommittees completed in April. And I just want to say, our Council on Aging is indebted to the various volunteers who were involved in this. We had almost 40 volunteers putting together this plan, and it is now scheduled to go to the City Council on July 13th in a report. And so we want to commend all of our volunteers, and it turns out whether it was the master plan or the implementation plan, which is critical, that we could not do this without our wonderful volunteers. That's really what it's all about. Now, I would just want to mention that we're hoping to get a large turnout from the senior community, and we're going to be working through our various committees and committee volunteers to get their folks, their friends out, so that we can show support for the work that they have been doing and support for the Council on Aging. So at this point, let me introduce the chair of the SAMP Transportation Committee, Dennis Wood, who has been very kind and patient because he was here a few months ago and he didn't make it up to the microphone. So we are glad that he has an opportunity to do that. Let me just say that Dennis is executive director of an organization, Senior Helpers, caring in-home companions, and Dennis is giving up his time. He works for a living, like some of us don't, and we appreciate the fact that he's able to take time out and work on this and help the community is very much appreciated. Dennis Wood.
Mel, thank you very much, and members, thank you. Andrea, Francine, how you guys doing? Let's start with a statistic. There were 4 million babies born in 1946, and there were also 4 million born in 47, and so on through until 1964. So that, by the American Census Bureau, that is the baby boomer era from 46 to 64. It's coming. It's a tidal wave. There is going to be an inordinate demand on our community and services and educating our community about the availability of transportation opportunities. We need to be as proactive as we possibly can. And unfortunately, only 14% of the survey respondents said they rely upon public transportation. They're going to have, that number is going to increase because it's going to have to increase. And as people get older, for example, my mother is 84 and she's doing quite well, but she's got Parkinson's, and the state of California, as a result of some surgery, temporarily revoked her ability to drive. I underline temporarily, at least in her mind. And so after about a year and a half, she decided she wanted to go back and fight that. And so she went through all the rigmarole, the paperwork, and meeting with the separate organization for the DMV down in El Segundo. She was interviewed by a social worker, had more documents to fill out by doctors, had a behind-the-wheel test, had a written test, and unfortunately, she failed. And that's the bad news. But the good news is she's no longer driving because she wouldn't be safe to herself and particularly those on the road. Thank God she's not in the room here. I'd be cut out of the will. Where I'm going with all of this, transportation is essential because so much about the community life and the breadth of value that seniors experience in our community is not in their homes. It's getting out. It's the community centers, and they need to get out. And as people get older, by 2050, the average life expectancy is going to be 116. In 1900, it was 49 years of age. So that is an incredible disparity. So what we need to do, and not just transportation, but in all of these subcommittees, is to be ahead of that curve, because it is definitely coming. And I am frankly very nervous even for my business, because not just in-home care, but do we have enough skilled nursing facilities? Do we have enough assisted living? Do we have enough independent living? I don't think so. So let me talk a little bit about what we're doing in the Transportation Committee. Dave has been a guiding light, and I like the new hairdo, Dave, just like me. We are advantaged by one simple fact. Transportation's already in place. There's an infrastructure. Mike Hauser runs it, does a great job. We have fixed routes and dial-a-ride, and there's already something to improve upon as opposed to initiate and create. And the things that we're going to be working on, there are 12 different steps that we're going to be doing in our plan, but there are 4 that are high priority, and with the council meeting coming up very, very soon, we have recommended to you to recommend to them that we approach these 4. And rather than go through those with you right now, I can just give you kind of a sense. Dial-a-ride needs to be reservation-driven. It will increase the frequency and usage, and consequently, the cost per dial-a-ride will come down. And then also, once people realize that they have to do reservations, they'll see the advantage of the fixed routes. And then they'll start taking the fixed routes. And the cost per fixed route is dramatically less than the dial-a-ride fixed route cost. So we're trying so hard to make sure that the consumer understands all of the variables all the transportation opportunities that they've got available to them. And one of the 4 things that we're recommending is an ambassadors program. It's a grassroots effort. There's nobody heading up that right now. So part of what we're going to do is try and find a leader of the ambassador program. There's going to be kiosks at certain locations, maybe at Goebel and other locations, so that the senior consumer or the adult children of the senior consumer can go and find out a little bit more. So much of what your responsibility and the council's responsibility and our responsibility is to promote and make the consumer aware, because we don't want to spend money on this and are not using it. It makes perfect sense for us to be very adamant about consumer awareness and education. And this is all very nice and general, and I can get into specifics with you on the 4 things that we're recommending, but today I really just want to kind of give you a sense of impact and urgency, even though we don't get a great sense of people being deprived now. But I think there's going to be a certain point in the future that they're going to be deprived of the ability to get the transportation that they so require and desire. So with all that said, any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis, for great work with the committee and working with the city. I want to thank Dave Grimm again, and sorry for not mentioning it at the beginning, but thank you.
That's all right.
For what you've done. And there was, as I recall, and I don't know, maybe you didn't mention it, but there was a major, I call it a watershed moment for the Senior Adult Master Plan when sometime in April, there was the transportation report was given by an update by the transportation folks from the city.
Correct.
And I think Mike Hauser gave it.
Right.
And what I observed, I watched it in the comfort of my office looking on the screen, and many times the council members made a point and asked Mike, was this in the master plan? Is this one of the master plan priorities? And there were 4 of them listed, and they referred to them. Now, they didn't quite agree with, there were some details, but it seems to me that's the direction. What you've done is really with transportation, because you have access to the city, that's the direction the program has to go, where you have direct access to the council.
Yeah.
And they're saying, is that your plan?
Absolutely. And because of Mike's influence and knowledge and awareness and wherewithal within the city's procedures, he was a great addition to the committee. Everything we started over when he joined the committee. We completely started over, and some of those items that were medium priorities, so we thought were medium priorities, became high priorities because he indicated to us how quickly that they were feasibly be able to be put in place. And so I would recommend to all the other committee members, the subcommittee members, to if there is an associated individual within the city that could be involved in that committee to assist, I think it will expedite their efforts.
Did
I answer your question?
No. Thank you. Yeah. That's excellent. And certainly that's what we want to strive for. Now, for example, in housing, which is the only other quote-unquote city entity that's sort of involved, we have the manager of housing on the program. Memory. Russ Watson, thank you.
Yes.
And I know Russ very well. Sorry, Russ, if you're watching, but anyway, get the. I'm older than you, so okay.
Yes. I think that this is an appropriate time to tell you, Dennis, about a person that's in one of the groups that I advise who I had written an article, and she grabbed a hold of it, and she said if seniors are isolated, it's their own fault. And I've made friends with a very feisty and with it person. And I said, and what are you talking about? And she said, well, I decided that I was too old to drive anymore, so I grabbed my daughter and we went to DMV and I surrendered my license, and then we went to City Hall and I got my dial-a-ride card. She said it all in one breath. And then I learned all there was to do about having to use dial-a-ride. And I said, and how is that working out for you? And she said, it's wonderful.
Well, great.
Get a testimonial.
And it's
I just did on television.
There's two things. There's two observations. One is the acceptance of.
Yes.
The person was agreeable to make that transition to not be driving. And the second is they learned as a result of being a member of Dial-A-Ride, more than likely riding in Dial-A-Ride, they got materials about what's going on in the city. They probably were put on a mailing list, and their knowledge of city activities probably increased as a result of the city mailing to that person because that person was using Dial-A-Ride.
It's interesting because she comes from a very supportive family who is certainly in a position to take care of her, but she's also 104% independent, and doesn't want to have anything dragging her down, and doesn't want to be tied to anything. So I think she knows Dial-A-Ride inside and outside well enough that I said, is there any bad thing that you have to say about it? She said, no, there's not a single bad thing. It's wonderful. They're wonderful to me. I've watched how they've operated with other people. If you're on a scooter, for your Lord's sakes, they drive up with a machine that drops a ramp, and the scooter scoots into the back of the conveyance, and off we go, and it's just outstanding. So I think that you need to hear that, and thanks very much for the work that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. If there's not any other questions or thoughts? Thank you, Dennis. All right.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and sometime again. I just want to announce to everyone that the Thousand Oaks Senior Adult Master Plan has been recognized in such a way by the National League of Cities. They have been our erstwhile city liaison, Council on Aging liaison, Francine Spriggle, received a call from the executive director of the National. No. They. Oh, thank you.
Good. I almost had. Would you like to say something about that? She would not like to say something about that.
We have submitted an application to the National League of Cities, and for a competition that they run every year, and this year the emphasis is on bringing about change, bringing about community change. And so we felt that, and Francine felt that when the city, the mayor, signed the application to submit that. It will be in December, and hopefully if we're selected, we're all going to Denver. We're going to go skiing.
Okay, we're on now to liaison reports. First one is the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging. And who's going to give that report? Nick?
Not to be confused with my earlier comments on the election coming up next Tuesday, the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging held an election last month to elect 3 members to the California Senior Legislature. The 3 people who were incumbents won this election, partly because they were the only 3 people who submitted applications, and they were all found to be qualified to continue in their posts. So it was a very simple election in that respect.
Sounds like some of our elections. No,
Yeah, I want to note that, thank you very much for that. And I just want to note that we are, the Ventura County, in fact, the court system has been sponsoring a study that I'm putting together. Something that's taken over the last few years, and it's almost ready. Ventura County Legal Handbook and Court Guide for Older Adults. What it'll be is the Area Agency on Aging staff was part of the committee in various parts of the court and other parts of the county system that deals with senior adults, and there is a draft available now, and it's going through the final stages of processing. But be on the lookout for that. We will, when it is officially released, we will notify everyone. There'll probably also be a press release on it. So it turns out. Unfortunately, as was mentioned today by a number of our speakers, we have sometimes seniors wind up in court for one reason or another, and so this should be very helpful.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Mel. The next report is the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP, which I will give. RSVP has 2 new programs they're starting. One is free tax counseling. You know that RSVP does tax returns from, I guess, January to mid-April. Well, now they've added free tax counseling for the rest of the year. Yep. For example, do you have any tax-related questions? Like, is there some decision you have to make financially in which may have tax consequences and you'd like to talk to someone about them? Has the IRS sent you a nasty letter? Well, we have some help for you. The RSVP Income Tax Coordinator, Richard During, is available by appointment to answer your questions. He's available on the second Wednesday of each month at the Global Senior Adult Center from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. So you have to schedule an appointment with him. Call 805-381-2742. That's 381-2742. And the other thing they've started is they have a free medication consultant. Yep, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Global Senior Adult Center. No appointment is necessary. You just come in and you can have a personal visit with a licensed pharmacist, and he will advise you on your medications, your whatever safety of your medications, interaction that you may have, and he'll just help you out with any questions you may have.
At one point, Martin, on the is there an income requirement for the tax part? Because there was an income requirement.
For tax preparation, there is. Although if you're a senior, there is no income tax. There is no for tax preparation, the income limitation only applies to you if you're under 65.
Is that right?
That's right. If you're seniors of any income,
It's too late now.
It's a little late now to worry about that. But there's no income.
Maybe I haven't filed it
on this yet.
Oh, so you need.
I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, our next report is on the Global Senior Adult Center, and Andrea is with us. Thank you very much, Andrea.
Well, good afternoon. I'll just piggyback your statement about medication consultant. It's Terrence. He is a registered pharmacist, and he also checks blood pressure. So you can have your blood pressure checked and consult about any medications you're on, and you can write them down, bring them in. He'll be more than happy to look at them. So that's Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 11, as you said, but thought I'd throw in the blood pressure part because we forgot that. Okay, well, I'm just going to talk a little bit. We had a really exciting month in May. So for those of you who missed out, we had our Generation Celebration and had a wonderful barbecue lunch by the Kiwanis, and lots of young people helping out with that, and very good talk, and lots of different groups with all their information, from hearing to safety, library, retirement places, you name it, it was pretty much there. So we had a really good turnout, about 250 or so people. And then the following day we had the Ms. Senior Canal Valley pageant, which is the preliminary to the Ms. Senior California pageant. So we had 166 there, and I thought we did well considering the Amgen ending of the race and the bike tour and everything else that was going on. So it was a very jam-packed weekend. And we are going to be packing some more in for June here, so I will go over what we've got. Next Monday, we've got Courage and Sacrifice at Sea. We have Barry M. Sachs. He's a recognized historian and a retired judge, and he has a really cool PowerPoint on the 4 chaplains of World War II. Quite notable history, and so he'll be presenting his PowerPoint and his talk. That'll be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We do ask that you just call in for seating reservations, so we make sure we've got enough for that. And as you talked earlier, the Social Security, we've got the internet class, and then with that, sometimes tax counseling. So again, you can see Richard the second Wednesday of each month. We've had some people just walking in thinking that they can come and see. So you got to realize it's the second Wednesday of the month, and you can call the RSVP office for that. We have a community safety and wellness event, and that's with the City of Thousand Oaks and Canal Recreation and Park District, and that's Wednesday, June 9th. So that's a really nice big program. It'll be right out front here. And the best part is we have buses that will do a shuttle from Global Center, so you don't have to worry about parking out on Teal Boulevard or at the lakes or in the parking structure here. And they start at 10:45, and they'll run every 45 minutes. But do call in or stop by, either one, and get your name on the list so we make sure we've got enough people for the buses. They're getting about half full, so definitely call. And this is going to be a really fun event because you can have your blood pressure checked, you can get massages, you can find out about healthy eating, you can link up with all sorts of things. So my understanding is there's probably like 30 or 40 booths, and it's quite a fun event. And it's free, so come on down. Water exercise and swimming. We do this free every summer. It'll start June 14th, runs through August 19th. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, we do it at the Thousand Oaks High School pool. And that's 12:35 to 1:25, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Newbury Park High School pool. June 14th, Self-Hypnosis Workshop. Barbara Arnello actually does our meditation group. Very wonderful woman, does great meditation, so if you need to relax or just get in touch with yourself, it's a really cool class. But she's going to be doing some self-hypnosis to help you relieve your own stress and improve sleep and relaxation, which will also help out the depression and everything else that was talked about earlier today, and your memory and much more. So come in for that, and we have a number for her for information if you want further information that way, and also for reservations. Don't forget, we do have an audiologist coming in on June 16th. She'll be doing a hearing seminar, so everything about hearing, how our hearing works, the different types of damages that can take place slowly or by noise from a job, all sorts of different things, and all the different types of adaptations that are now available to help all those different types of hearing loss. Now, the big one is make your home and lifestyle safe and stylish. So we have this presented by Moving Seniors Forward. So it's a big seminar. We've got them talking about strategies for downsizing, aging in your place to help with design, modify or update your home within a budget, exploring investment options, innovative products that are out there to help you, tips to create your environment safe and to avoid falls. I know this has been mentioned before, but Ventura County has one of the highest incidences of falls within the home. And an array of medical equipment and products to assist you. And then we have our own Commissioner Jim Searden coming, and he's going to talk about living in Thousand Oaks, and I'll look into the future. So he will be there as well, and you will need to call the center to get your name on the list. There will be some little bit of munchies and whatnot going on, and that'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, June 17th. Then June 19th, Saturday, staff is putting on a big barbecue. So that's actually before bingo and before all the people show up to play bridge and pool and whatever else. And that'll be from 11 to 12 noon, and it's $6, and the tickets are on sale currently. And so Chefs Mike and Mark will be there, and then, of course, I'll be running around. So come out for a fun barbecue Saturday, June 19th. Then our health insurance counseling advocacy counselors are going to be talking about Medicare fraud on June 28th. You just spoke about fraud and Medicare and whatnot, Mel, so that falls right into that, and there is a lot of it going on. So if you want to learn more about what even Mel was talking about, that'll June 28th, 1:30 to 3:30. Again, we'll call for reservations, and we're going right into the first thing of July, and that'll be July 4th, and that'll be our Senior Home Run Derby, and that is at Borchard Park, Field 1, and it's a $5 registration. We've got men's and women's divisions and age brackets. And the Derby starts at 9, and you can register beforehand at the Global Senior Adult Center, or you can also come early to the park at around 8:30, and we'll take your $5 and get you in there. Now, the number to the Global Center is 381-2744. And don't forget, we also have our email, which is gsac@crpd.org, or our website, which is globalsenioradultcenter.org. So you can find us all sorts of places here. And I think, trips. We've got lots of trips. Got the Ventura County Fair coming up August 10th, and that's Senior Free Admission Day. And we will have our Laughlin Luau at the Riverside Hotel, obviously in Laughlin, Tuesday, August 17th, through and coming back on August 20th. So you've got 4 days and 3 nights. And then Pageant of the Masters and Laguna Arts Festival, which everybody loves, and that's Thursday, August 26th. And all those will go on sale Friday, June 11th. At 9 a.m. We still have some room on our Catalina Island adventure. Hollywood Bowl. This is a really good one. Tickets are still on sale for Friday, July 2nd. It's $82, but our seats are right behind those nice big boxed areas. And you get the fireworks, and Vince Gill is supposed to be there. So you've got a lot of things going on. So even though that might be $82, you got the bus, and you're getting all the great music and Vince Gill and great seats. And we have some other things on sale, still some long ones like San Francisco, a Hawaiian one, Albuquerque Balloon Festival, which will be in October, but we are selling spaces for that, as well as Branson, Memphis, and Nashville. And we are looking at doing Catalina and Queen Mary. It's a 4-day trip, and that's in October. So definitely make sure you get online and look at all our goodies, or stop by and get a newsletter. We also do newsletters by email. So again, our email is gsac@crpd.org. So you can always just email us and tell us you want to start getting the newsletter, and it's free if it's by email. So yes, you had a question? Yeah.
One quick question. You mentioned the Ventura County Fair. Will there be transportation provided, perhaps?
There's transportation. Yes, there is.
From Global?
From Global. But tickets aren't available. Hopefully.
Well,
Hopefully.
that's a change, man.
So tickets will go on either on sale or be available for free by registration in July.
Super. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Norkin?
Yes, thank you, Jim. Today is a very important day in the life of two people I know very well. Today they are celebrating their 64 years of being married. Wow. To each other, that is.
To each other.
One of them is myself, and the other is my beloved wife, Arlene, and I'd like to wish her a happy anniversary today.
Is that it? Do you have more? That's hard to top. Well, I have one. Sir, David?
Well, you go first.
All right, I have, you all love a mystery, right? Well, there's one that's just about to open up here in the next day or two, and I'd invite you all to come see Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. And it's up to you to figure out who the potential killer may be. And as an added mystery, it might be interesting to note that one of the Council on Aging members here, and I won't tell you which one, is actually in this play. So I would invite you to come, Hillcrest Center for the Arts, starting this particular Friday.
Quanto.
Quanto. David?
Thank you, Jim. Just an added note to what Andrea said about the pageant, recent pageant about Miss Senior California. I was enthralled with the participants. Susan Cashman, who I think a lot of you folks have seen on previous telecasts of ours, did just a wonderful job in bringing together a bunch of lovely ladies. I would like to see some more gals from the Caneo enter it, though, in some of our local communities, and maybe muscle out some of these folks from Coda de Casa and things like that. But it was a wonderful presentation, and I would challenge all the gals who were in this, that with their poise and maybe the confidence that they gain from such an event, that they go out in their communities and continue the demonstration of the era of elegance that they are a part of, and to get involved maybe in some volunteer activities with that capability. Things that we have espoused here at Council on Aging throughout the year, become a part of that, and continually challenge yourself as well as our community to be responsive to the seniors. One other thing, there's another thing, is on Father's Day, and everybody should know when Father's Day is, but I'll remind you, it's June 20th. There's going to be a classic, I know they aren't listening either, are they? But there's going to be a classic car show over at Sunset Hills. It's going to be benefiting this organization called Project Cuddle, which is dedicated to ending baby abandonment. I know baby abandonment is probably not a big thing on our docket, but the classic cars would hopefully be enjoyable. It's free to the public, so I'd encourage you to come out Father's Day to Sunset Hills during the afternoon and see some wonderful cars. The last but not least is I'd like to acknowledge my mom, Viv Grimm, who is out here from Florida. As you can imagine, she is a senior, and she was looking at all the things that we offer here in the area as a senior community. She was impressed with the Goebel, looking at just the brochure as well as the actual facility, and was very impressed with what we get to do out here. And so let's not forget, as we said, we are a progressive and a very enjoyable community to be a part of. And I'm glad she enjoyed the visit. I do have to acknowledge that she is Queen of Scrabble, which hurts to say, but she really did well against Corky and I on Scrabble. Thank you, Mom, for being out here.
I would like to also add, I believe that your mom was a participant in the Miss Senior Florida competition. Isn't that correct?
Very good.
Yeah, and when we saw you, you had your sash and all of those wonderful things. Yes.
It was in 1990.
Yeah.
The kids were all down there to see me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're still a babe. Francine?
I got one more.
Have you got something to say? Yes.
I just want to remind you that, you are doing the Love Run, right? This coming weekend? June 6th.
I don't know.
June 6th. So your team, along with Francine, is the young and the rest of us. So make sure you get out there and keep practicing. Also, any of you out there that are interested in the Love Run, whether you run or walk or whatever, it is a really good cause to help raise money for senior concerns. And you can still register online at seniorconcerns.org. And that's this Sunday, June 6th.
Okay. I'd like to announce that next Wednesday is my wife's birthday, and the following weekend we're going to be traveling up to Santa Cruz for my granddaughter's graduation from UC Santa Cruz.
Okay, then. All right. That's worth celebrating.
Just to clear that up, Dave's mom was actually Miss Senior Florida, not just a participant. She was Miss Senior Florida, right? Just take it up one step. And the other thing is, let me again urge you to attend the Senior of the Year dinner tomorrow night. Go by Gobo, get your ticket. It's a great dinner. It's a fun evening, and it is paying some honor to people who really deserve it. So thank you.
A minute, 30 seconds.
I have 2 announcements. I think so. Yeah, I have 2 announcements. The first of which is today is my birthday. Unfortunately, my new classification comes with no new benefits. The second announcement is that I learned last Friday that my daughter-in-law is pregnant.
Oh, right.
And the expected birth date of my second grandchild is identical to the birth date of my first grandchild, which in turn was identical to the birth date of my father.
Let's see.
So when I get dementia problems, I only have one date to remember.
That's good. One item. As long as everyone's doing all this family stuff, let me just notice that Norman, our grandson, just graduated the University of Maryland, computer science, etc. And hopefully he's on his way to John Marshall in Chicago to get involved in patent as a patent attorney. So anyway, I know he's not watching because this is in Maryland, but we're proud of him.
Congratulations.
Wait.
Thank you for leaving your mics off.
By the way, you should be singing.
Are there any other commissioner comments to be made here? If not, let's just adjourn this meeting.
Okay.